When Heath Ledger walked onto Hollywood's biggest stage, he carried himself with a quiet intensity that made people lean in. He wasn't the loudest actor in the room, nor the one courting cameras with jokes and banter. His craft spoke for him, and by the mid-2000s, it was undeniable. After Brokeback Mountain premiered in 2005, Ledger transformed from rising star into cultural lightning rod. The film, a tragic love story between two cowboys in Wyoming spanning decades, wasn't just critically acclaimed, it was socially seismic. Ledger, as Ennis Del Mar, gave a performance so raw, so unflinchingly tender, that audiences who had never seen queer love portrayed with dignity on screen suddenly had to confront it. The film won 3 Academy Awards in 2006, including Best Director for Ang Lee.
For Brokeback Mountain, Ang Lee.
And both Ledger and his co-star Jake Gyllenhaal earned Oscar nominations. But beneath the accolades was an undercurrent of controversy. In conservative circles, the film was derided, ridiculed, even condemned. Radio hosts sneered about the gay cowboy movie, late-night comedians worked it into punchlines, and the culture wars of the Bush era latched onto it like a bone to chew. Ledger never laughed. For him, Brokeback Mountain wasn't a gay cowboy joke. It was a story about love, repression, and the brutal cost of denying one's true self. So when the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences invited him and Gyllenhaal back to present at the Oscars in 2007, they were told the bit would involve poking fun at their character's romance. For Gyllenhaal, ever the good sport, it was easy to shrug and go along. It's all in good fun, he recalled thinking years later. But Ledger's reaction was immediate and firm. No. It's not a joke to me, he told Jake. I don't want to make jokes about it. This is about love. That single decision to refuse Hollywood's biggest stage because it wanted to reduce Brokeback Mountain to a punchline reveals more about Heath Ledger than any acceptance speech could have. It was an act of quiet rebellion, a moment where principle outweighed career strategy, where dignity outweighed visibility. Ledger had always been known as an artist who leaned into discomfort, who sought roles that stretched and twisted him, but in that moment his refusal was as much performance as any he gave on screen. It was a performance of integrity. The irony is that Brokeback Mountain had already been treated as a cultural joke by some within Hollywood itself. Despite widespread critical consensus that it was the best film of the year, it lost Best Picture to Crash, a film now remembered more for its safe politics than for its artistry. Many critics at the time saw the upset as a snub motivated by discomfort. Ledger, who attended the 2006 Oscars with Michelle Williams, watched as the film that defined his career was celebrated, then sidelined. For him to return the following year only to participate in mocking the very thing that had defined his artistic breakthrough felt like betrayal. Jake Gyllenhaal has spoken about the moment with awe. That's the thing I loved about Heath, he told Another Man magazine. He would never joke. Someone wanted to make a joke about the story or whatever, and he was like, no, this is about love. Like, that's it, man. That clarity, that unwillingness to dilute the gravity of his work set him apart. In an industry where most young actors would have killed for the chance to present at the Oscars, Ledger walked away because he refused to compromise what the story meant. What makes the story all the more haunting is how close it sits to his untimely death less than a year later. Ledger died in January 2008 of an accidental prescription drug overdose, just months before the release of his career-defining role as the Joker in The Dark Knight.
I don't want to kill you. What would I do without you? Go back to ripping off mob dealers? No.
The Academy, which he had once rejected, posthumously awarded him Best Supporting Actor. When his family took the stage to accept on his behalf, it was a bittersweet redemption, an acknowledgement that Hollywood couldn't ignore the depth of his craft, even if it had once wanted him to be the butt of a joke. Ledger's refusal also speaks volumes about the climate of the mid-2000s. In 2005, gay marriage was still illegal across the United States. Public opinion polls showed a majority of Americans opposed to it. Mainstream media often treated queer identity as comic fodder, something to be winked at rather than taken seriously. For Ledger to stand firm and refuse to play along wasn't just an actor protecting his performance. It was a subtle but powerful act of allyship. He wasn't gay, but he knew the story he told mattered, and he refused to cheapen it. And this wasn't new for him. Ledger had always bristled against Hollywood's expectations. After his breakout in 10 Things I Hate About You, he rejected safe romantic leads and teen heartthrob roles, instead diving into complex characters: a suicidal prison guard in Monsters Ball, a medieval rebel in A Knight's Tale, a heroin addict in Candy. He was chasing art, not applause. By the time Brokeback Mountain came along, Ledger was primed to take on something risky, something raw. He didn't just play Ennis Del Mar, he inhabited him, from the clenched jaw to the hunched shoulders, from the murmured dialogue to the suffocating loneliness. Ang Lee later said Ledger taught him things about the character that weren't even in the script. Hollywood wasn't always ready for that kind of seriousness. The Oscars wanted Ledger and Gyllenhaal to wink, to let the audience off the hook, to remind middle America that it was okay to laugh. Ledger's refusal denied them that. In doing so, he preserved the dignity of Brokeback Mountain in a way that critics and historians now recognize as vital. Without that refusal, the legacy of the film might have been tarnished, remembered as another piece of award-season comedy fodder rather than as the watershed moment in queer cinema that it became. After Ledger's death, the refusal took on mythic weight. Fans and fellow actors looked back and saw in that decision the same qualities that made him unforgettable on screen: intensity, integrity, and an almost spiritual seriousness about the work. His Joker, which critics hailed as one of the greatest performances of all time, wasn't the work of someone who joked around. It was the work of someone who believed art could cut to the bone. And yet, his refusal wasn't dour. Those who knew him recall Ledger's warmth, his humor, his curiosity. He wasn't incapable of laughing. He just refused to laugh at something that, to him, represented love and truth. That distinction matters. He wasn't rejecting comedy, he was rejecting cynicism. He was rejecting the cheap impulse to turn vulnerability into ridicule. Today, nearly 2 decades after Brokeback Mountain, Hollywood is more comfortable celebrating queer love stories. Films like Call Me By Your Name and Moonlight have won Best Picture. Queer representation, while still fraught, has expanded. Looking back, Ledger's refusal feels prescient, as though he was staking out a boundary before the culture was ready to respect it. He drew a line and said, "Some stories are sacred." It's tempting to imagine what Heath Ledger would have said if he had taken that stage. Maybe he would have smiled through the jokes, maybe he would have read the teleprompter, but knowing him, it's just as likely he would have thrown it out and spoken from the heart. Instead, his silence became the statement. His refusal became the speech.
It was 9 years ago, 28-year-old actor Heath Ledger died of an accidental prescription drug overdose. But Ledger's ambition and creative spirit left the world with a slew of home videos.
The tragedy of Ledger's death will always color the way we remember him, but the story of why he refused to present at the Oscars endures because it captures who he was in life. He was a man unwilling to compromise the integrity of his work, a man who treated love stories, even love stories between fictional cowboys in a hostile world, as sacred. When Hollywood wanted to reduce it to a gag, he stood firm. And in that firmness, Heath Ledger left behind not just a performance, but a principle.